So are you ready to join me on a spiritual journey? That was a little bit lukewarm, but okay, I'll ask it one more time and maybe it'll get a little hotter. Are you willing to join me on a spiritual journey? All right, thank you, my brother Brian. Thank you. Well, we are going to talk about a spiritual journey, our spiritual journey for the next several weeks. And I'm going to begin by talking today about the idea of awakening. And next week I'll talk to you about intention, the power of intention. We'll talk about mindfulness one week, and we'll talk about our being a spiritual GPS, so to speak, as well as what to do with this thing called ego. But for today, it's about awakening. And I understand there's a kind of new lingo out there now about talking about being woke. Am I doing that right? Is that a millennial thing? Astrid, is that a millennial? How do you do it?
You just say,
I'm woke. Okay, let's say it. I'm woke. Did we do it right? Although millennials don't like people my age doing their stuff. So anyway, for the non-millennials, it's our awakening. For the millennials,
it's #StayWoke.
hashtags, now you're getting complicated for my generation. #StayWoke. All right. Well, anyway, that's what we're talking about this morning. The idea of our awakening, a spiritual awakening. You know, when I think about my journey into unity, I can't say that it began with a desire to awaken spiritually because I didn't really understand what that was. But I was quite young. I was about 18 years old when I found unity, and I was 21 years old when I went into the ministerial school and was accepted for that program. So for me, at that point in my life, my involvement in unity was much more about personal growth and about really getting myself to feel better about myself, getting myself to get over a broken heart, my first love that didn't work out, my heart was broken. So I came to church looking for very practical information that would help me personally. And I really didn't think about the idea of going much deeper than that. But after a while, I realized and learned that this journey is not just about our personal growth. It's not just about us getting ourselves together. It is about something that still and always will include our individual personal growth, but it is literally also about our ultimate spiritual awakening. And that is something that is so important right now, not only for us as individuals, but for us as a human species, to wake up and to stay awake together, and to let the way that we live and move and think and act and decide and vote and purchase and all the things that we do externally as human beings, to let it be grounded in what we believe and what we understand spiritually, and to stay awake in the process of doing that. You know, there's truth in this concept, in this idea that we start this journey as souls that already know who and what we really are. And then somewhere along the line, we forget, we fall asleep. But we come here as spirits, as souls that already know. I want to read to you words from Wordsworth in part of his poem, Ode on Intimations of Immortality. These words are so unity, they are so metaphysical. He writes, "Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. The soul that rises with us, our life's star, hath had elsewhere its setting, and cometh from afar, not in entire forgetfulness, and not in utter nakedness, but trailing clouds of glory do we come from God, who is our home." Take that in for a moment. Take that in. Our birth is but a sleep and a forgetting. We come here not in entire forgetfulness and not in utter nakedness, but trailing clouds of glory do we come from God, who is our home. So there is a part of us that already starts out knowing that on whatever way an infant soul can know. And then somewhere along the line, we seem to forget. I'm reminded of a story I first heard from I just forgot his name. Help me. Do you remember? Do you remember, Kevin? It was one of our Unity ministers. Anyway, it was one of our Unity ministers who told a story about a family that had No, it wasn't Robertson. Doesn't matter. It's not pertinent to the story. I took us off. But what was important was I heard this from one of our colleague Unity ministers who was talking about a situation that had happened in his church in one of the families that attended. They had like a 6 or 7-year-old boy, and they had just given birth to a little baby girl. And they had been preparing their son all through the 9 months of pregnancy that he was going to have a little baby, and how to be with that little baby, and you don't hurt little babies, and you have to be gentle and careful, and you don't want to drop little babies, and you can't hug them too tight, and all of that kind of stuff. And the little boy was very, very interested and so excited to have this baby sister that he wanted to spend all the time with her that he possibly could, which sometimes made the parents a little bit worried. Why did he really want to spend so much time? And one day they found the answer why. Glenn Mosley was his name. And Glenn said that I knew it would come to me. And Glenn said that the parents found the little boy, like 6 or 7 years old, in the nursery, peering through the crib, saying to his infant baby sister, "Tell me about God. I'm beginning to forget." Tell me about God. I'm beginning to forget. And I think that so much describes us, that there's a part of us that has always known who and what we are, but then something happens and we forget. The Chinese call it the 10,000 things. The 10,000 things that happen that just cause us to forget. And I bet you could probably come up with a list pretty close to 10,000 things. And I have a feeling that saying of 10,000 things was many generations ago, with not nearly the distractions in life then that you and I have in life today. But we wind up falling asleep. These are times that we cannot afford to fall asleep and stay asleep. These are times that every single one of us needs to be awake. I would say that most, if not all, of the world's problems are the result of actions of human beings who are asleep spiritually. To be asleep spiritually is the only explanation I can have for how we can do some of the things that we do to each other. We have forgotten a really important truth. We have forgotten that first and foremost, we belong to each other. We are not a human race. We've been acting too much like a human race. We are a human family. And we need to wake up together, and we need to stay awake together. We need to find our spiritual, moral compass and courage, and act upon whatever that guides us to do wherever we are. Whether it is just in our families, not all of us want to march, not all of us feel that's the call to that, or maybe we even feel that's the wrong action. But we've got to find what is ours to do. One of the rabbis yesterday, and I wish I'm going to have to find his name, and maybe Pico can help me find it. One of the older rabbis that was part of the march yesterday had a handmade paper sign that he wore all at the event Friday and all day Saturday. And it was a handwritten sign that said, "This is what theology looks like." That so inspired me. This is what theology looks like. His theology and our theology is not exactly the same, but we have the same God. And we cry the same tears over the same kinds of injustices and pain that we see, whether it's very, very close to home with people we know, or those much further away. So we cannot afford to let any of the 10,000 things cause us to close our eyes and to shut down. My malas are one of the things that I wear that help me to remember, no matter what is going on around me, no matter how many 10,000 things are happening in my life personally, that I made a promise when I left India in 1999, after being so totally changed by that experience, that I would never fall back into a life of privilege in which I closed my eyes and pretended to forget the things that I had seen. That as uncomfortable as it might be, and as painful and challenging as sometimes things might be, that I would not ever close my heart. And that doesn't mean that it's easy. When we keep our hearts open, whether it is somebody in our family who is dying of cancer, whether it is a struggling child that we are trying to help transcend alcoholism or drug abuse, it's uncomfortable and it hurts to be in that place, doesn't it? When you care and you want to help. But the fact that it's uncomfortable, the fact that it hurts, must never be the reason that we shut down and we don't do whatever we know we can do. We don't have to do it all. But by golly, we've got to do what we can do because we do belong to each other. Our awakening, we're talking about awakening, we're talking about what the spiritual journey really is like. Our awakening can happen in so many different ways and for so many different reasons. Sometimes, some of us in this room, our awakening happened like a cosmic 2x4 hit us into awakeness, right? Nod your head if it was a cosmic 2x4. Some of you had a cosmic 2x4. Some of you may be triggered into your awakening because you've been experiencing for quite some time what mystics call the dark night of the soul. You may not even have words to describe it, but you know that something's just not quite right. You sense it, you feel it, you know it, and it's what leads you. It compels you to some degree of transformation. For some in this room, it will be looking out upon the world and seeing injustice that says to us, enough is enough. I'm going to awaken and I'm going to put feet beneath my prayers. It could be a breaking down or an opening up of relationships in our life, but there are many ways that we are triggered to awakeness. The Sufis say that there is a homesickness of the soul, and I would say it can only be satisfied by an awareness of the presence and power of God within us, a recognition of who and what we are, and a recognition that we belong to each other and we are one human family. Before I toss it to Kevin for a few minutes, I want to share with you a couple of readings. One is from Eckhart Tolle. It was in an interview he did with Oprah. The real truths of life are never entirely new to you because there is a level deep down within you where you already know all these things, all those spiritual truths that you read or hear, but suddenly you now recognize them. Ultimately, it's not new information, it's an awakening. It's an awakening. And someone else said it this way. Whenever you hear or read anything of a spiritual nature that moves you or touches your soul, you're not learning something, you're remembering what you've always known. It's a gentle awakening. So in our spiritual journey, in our awakening, what does it look like when we are living a life more fully, consciously awake? And I'm going to pass it to my friend, Unity Minister, Reverend Kevin Ross. Please give him a warm, warm welcome. Love you.
All right, did you hear that? Good morning, beloveds. It is my pleasure to bring you greetings from your kissing cousins up north at Unity of Sacramento, where I serve as the senior minister. Also thrilled to get to serve with your illustrious senior minister on the Leadership Council of the Association of Global New Thought, and so we bring greetings from there as well. I'm happy to add my voice to this discussion about awakening. And to use an old unity affirmation, why don't we try it out just to get us going? Say with me, I'm alive. I'm alert. I'm awake. I'm enthusiastic. Now just touch someone on the shoulder and say, wake up. Go ahead and wake them up. I love that I get to play in this sandbox with my sister from another mister, my sister Rev Wendy, because she is perhaps one of the most awakened spiritual teachers in our movement, and you're so fortunate to have her here in San Diego. Sincerely. I've been, ministers, when we visit churches, we spy on the church, to see what we can take back to our churches. I've been coming here for years. You didn't know that, but I've been secret shopping from your wonderful community. But I'm glad to add my voice to this important series, and I trust that you will make it your business to be present for every single lesson, because the world needs people who are woke, yes? So I want to just drop some thoughts that you might contemplate. The first is, our lives are a dash between two dates. Our lives in the Earth School are a dash between two dates, our earthly entrance date and our earthly exit date. And our lives will be measured, the quality of our lives will be measured by how well we dash between these two dates. Are we dashing half asleep? Are we dashing unconsciously? Or are we dashing or moving through life consciously aware of who we are, whose we are, and why we are here? I truly believe that we are both meant and sent to be here, that we're not an accident of history and an accident of nature, that we are here by design. And our willingness to be conscious about that will serve to create a virus of newness on our planet. Have you ever gotten tired of the old, worn-out arguments that make life so uncomfortable and so bland, just blah? Anybody ever know what I'm talking about? And I think it's because, as Reverend Wendy pointed out, that people are moving through life half asleep, so they don't have anything else to talk about but recycling old thought. Yes? I think you are a bright idea in the mind of spirit. I believe that we are a bright idea in the mind of spirit, and when we get hold of what that divine idea is, then we get to live it out powerfully. Point to yourself and say, I'm a bright idea in the mind of spirit. Come on, I'm a bright. So let's talk about just a little bit of this. Here's another thought. When we awaken when the seed of our potential is fully fertilized by the soil of our experience. I'll say it again. We awaken when the seed of our potential is fully fertilized by the what? Soil of our experience. But sometimes we get ourselves too busy cursing the soil or resisting the fertilization process. Who knows what I'm talking about? Fertilizer serves a purpose. You've heard the statement, shift happens. Because when the shift is happening in our lives, when the shift hits the fan in our lives, we don't look at it as something they're conditioning us to bring out the shine in us, to bring out the potential within us. We tend to look at it as something happening to us, but it's really not something happening to you. It's something happening, what about it? For you. And if I can look at myself as being fertilized and optimized by the conditions that I am experiencing in my life, then I move through life with a greater sense of purpose, yes? So we want to consider, as we move through this spiritual journey toward awakening, the seed and the soil. We embrace the seed. It's easy to do that. But the soil, keep that in mind. We awaken when we surrender or place our personalities in service to our purpose, and not our purpose in service to our personalities. Say it again. We awaken when we place our personalities in service to our purpose, and not our purpose in service to our personalities. So many of us spend a great deal of time constructing our personalities. And it usually shows up through our individual styles. Do you know what I'm talking about? That we have a way of saying, this is me and that's you, yes? Now, don't get me wrong. I don't want us to live in a world where there's just no style. You know what I'm saying? You happen to have the most best dressed senior minister on the planet. Doesn't she always show up looking? But I believe she understands something about this, that she recognizes that she is a soul on assignment. And she clothes or cloaks or decorates the divine that is within her, and not the other way around. Have you got it? And when you recognize that it's about what's shining through you, then you have a right to shine, yes? Because it's shining through a personality. And that brings the creativity, but it's not about your personality, but it's about the purpose that you've been given. So it's moving through this balance of personality and purpose. Each one of us has a unique purpose, yes? And it's our task to really bring it into visibility. We awaken when our caring for a cause greater than ourselves meets with a moment that demands our courage. We awaken when our caring for a cause greater than ourselves meets with a moment that demands our purpose. I love this quote by Dr. Benjamin Elijah Mays, who was the mentor to Martin Luther King Jr. He said, "I would rather walk into hell by choice than to stumble into heaven by following the crowd." You have to be awake to do that, you understand? And so many of us privately talk a big game. Do you know what I'm talking about? We have beliefs that we really feel strongly about, but often we work on those beliefs as Monday morning quarterbacks, as armchair theoreticians, never really putting feet to our faith, but we become professional complainers. Anybody know about a professional complainer? Or you're sitting next to one. Just look ahead, look straight ahead at me. Don't give them away. Say right here. Come on. And so there has to be that moment when we have a date with destiny. It occurs when we are willing to allow the things that we believe deeply to make their entrance known in public. Are you with me? Are you with me? And I believe you and I are called to be disruptors to the disruptors. Are you hearing me? You know, that each of us is here to be a force for good in the world. And sometimes we give too much elbow room to people who major in the minors, who are busy in the thick of thin things, making conditions more difficult for all of us. Are you hearing me this morning? And so I came to San Diego to join with leaders who recognize that families belong together and babies don't belong in cages. And we were okay saying that in public. We're okay saying that in public. We marched into hell for a heavenly cause. When you are spiritually awake, you don't have a problem exercising the ovarian audacity and the testicular fortitude that it takes to bring down walls and build bridges of possibilities for a world that works for all of us. Is all I'm saying. And so it's necessary that this center, especially, one of the leading centers in our movement, that this center and the people who are part of this center blaze a trail for many in our movement who just need someone like you, who is willing to break the silence on the things that really matter and appear. And I promise you, you will have that date with destiny because the conditions will be right and ripe, and you will flower and bloom in real time. You won't have to force it. It'll be your moment. And you will help the world to tilt more to a place of compassion, of courage, and of inclusion. I want to close with this idea, some words from this book. When we are living an awakened life, we're living a life that is victorious over circumstances. We're positive transformers of our communities. We are leaders within our society. We live each day when we win because we are living a life built on our values, in conformity with our desires, in service to our purpose, in harmony with our fellow men, and in love with life itself. I believe that that's the life that we were sent here for, and I'm glad that Unity San Diego is taking the lead. God bless you. It's your time to shine. Let's do it. Amen.
Many people enjoy Reverend Wendy's talks and meditations and aren't able to attend the Unity Center in person. If you're part of our extended family from around the world and would like to help support the Unity Center, please go to our website or download our free app, which offers even more ways to connect with the Unity Center. Namaste.